You are now listening to an episode of Hidden Voices, so sit back, relax, and enjoy our community podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Hidden Voices. I'm your host Samir, and today we're continuing on the second part of season 2. The first 5 episodes are now available on scribershive.com as well as SoundCloud and YouTube. The first 5 conversations were more structured group interviews, and the second half of this season will include one-on-one interviews with industry professionals and entrepreneurs. Today we have with us Lola. Lola, say hi.
Hi, everyone.
As well as Farah. Farah,
Hi,
say
everyone.
hi.
Hi, thanks, Samir.
And Farah, if you could do the honors of introducing Lola for us. Who is Lola?
Yeah, sure. I think, I'm going to tell you a little bit of story about how I met Lola, but I'm going to get Lola to really introduce herself really well
Of
and talk
course,
about her
yes.
work. Yeah, but I had the honor of meeting Lola last year, and Lola is one of those entrepreneurs I instantly connected with. She came to see us at our office. We shared the same ethos and vision, and we wanted to make a difference, with our talents and what we do best. And straight away, I connected really well with Lola, and we luckily, we had this project that we're working on with London Metropolitan University to train recent graduates to prepare for the working world. So I was able to collaborate with Lola to design some really good workshop around how to really think about, the kind of career that you want to pursue in the future and how you could design it. And Lola came through and delivered this powerful workshops. Even till now, the participants still come back to us and say, love that workshop and how much it's helped them as well. So, I'm very honored to have Lola as our guest today to carry on with the second season. I'm going to pass on to Lola to tell us a little bit about herself and what she does and her business as well.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Farah, for that introduction, and Samir. I'm really, really honored to be here. My name is Lola Yunus, and I run 2 main platforms. One is Impact Straight, and Impact Street is a training and development company. We help people to do work they love, take what they're passionate about to create and design a profitable career that is purpose driven. And then I run my blog, which is a community per se. It's lolayunus.com. And I challenge cultural norms. I'm from an African background, and I find that a lot of us as people from African background, many times we are constrained with the cultural norms, the societal expectations. So my writings on the blog, I share writings and articles to sort of challenge people from African background to ask life questions, deep questions to reflect and to challenge cultural norms so they can, become the authentic version of themselves. I also recently started a project called the Single Series, which has been so successful. It's quite shocking. That just launched a month ago, where we help yet to be married Muslims. We give them premarital tips so that they can create a happy and loving marriage. Um, by my day profession, I am a governance professional. I'm a lawyer, and I do that as my day job. But in all of the things I do, there's a core driving principle, and that is pursuit of impact. I'm a person of faith, and I believe that impact is actually divine. Whether you will create impact or not, that is not really up to you. But my job, my responsibility is to live my life and do work that is in pursuit of positive impact. And the impact that I really hope to make when I'm no longer here, while I'm still here, is to have a positive influence on people, especially people of African background.
Amazing. You've mentioned a multitude of things that you have done as not only as your main job, but also what you do in addition to it, as like almost like you're balancing it together. So I just wanted to know how it all started up. What you mentioned about Impact Street. How did it all start up?
So thanks, Samir. I recently, or not recently, about 2, 3 years ago, discovered that I'm what they call the multipotentialite.
Mhm.
So I always tend to do many things at different times or at the same time. But Impact Street came from a very personal place. Like I mentioned, my background is law, but I got to a point where I decided to step away from law And right now, I focus more on my entrepreneurship. I do more of that. But I had a real struggle because I had this professional identity that I'm a lawyer, but I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore. I wanted to do the things that lights me up. I wanted to do the things that I love to do, and which is helping people, giving people the tools to live the kind of life they want to live. So I had that struggle of how do I go away from law to doing this? How do I start? Where do I start from? But having gone through a journey of, I call it like personal discovery or uncovering who I really was, I was able to identify the things that were very true to me. And I was finally able to accept that, yes, I did law and my background is law. I don't have to be a lawyer. As simple as that sound, it was such a journey to come to that conclusion that law is no longer for me. And this is, I want to go into the personal transformation, personal development space. And so Impact Streets was that journey that I started 5 years ago of how do I go from law to doing something that I love that would also empower me financially. In that journey, I learned so many things, changing career and all of that. And so that was why I started Impact Streets, because I then realized that there were so many people in jobs that they do not like. They go, they do the job, but they're only there for the paycheck. Well, that's fine if that's a choice. But if you wanted to do something that was more in alignment with your value, your passion, without sacrificing your financial freedom, there is a way to do it. Unfortunately, it's difficult sometimes, especially when you've been in a particular career for so long. So when I was able to crack that code for myself, I felt it was necessary to help others. And so that's how Impact Tree started. So we started it by helping people to design the work they love. And I'm grateful today that we've even done more, we've gone beyond that, and we also do personal development. But it was that journey that led me to start Impact Street.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I've noticed there is a pattern for some people. Unfortunately, when they are looking for careers, there are some people out there who don't go for what they're really passionate for, and it's a shame that that's the that's that's the choice they have. But obviously, like if you want to put food on the table, you have to do what you have to do. But what you what message would you have for like the new generation who would be following their passions in more like a like a media outlet, like media platforms. Now we're in the generation of like the digital age where young people are starting to have like YouTube careers and all the other things like that on digital platforms. Uh, is there any like uh, message that you'd want to give to them?
Oh, yes. One thing I'll say to the young person listening is you're not what you studied in university. Who you are, who you're gonna become, who you're becoming does not have to be dependent on that first degree. I find a lot of young people, they feel, oh, because I've studied law or even medicine, or because I've studied, these big careers that are quite popular in the immigrant community, or maybe accounting, or even not even the immigrant community.
Mm.
Generally, parents, the generation before us, they wanted us to study, things that they felt we would be safe and secure, and that is fine. But who you are and the career you would ultimately do does not have to be determined by your first degree. That's number one. Number two is don't have a tunnel vision. Don't feel as if because, oh, I did engineering, I spent 3 years traveling the world doing engineering, and then you start your job and you realize that actually this is not what I want to do. There's nothing wrong with the first is empowering to recognize that this is not what I want. A lot of people don't even know what it is they don't want. So don't have a tunnel vision of your career. The way the world is now, the career path, there's so many career paths. So number one, embrace all of you. Number three is try stuff, test things. Don't assume you're going to like something or you're not going to like something. Just try. If you're in whatever keeps coming to you, whatever interest, there's certain things you can do. Maybe, for example, you find yourself that whenever you're on Google, you're constantly researching about a particular topic. or when you're on YouTube, you're probably constantly searching a particular thing. It means that maybe consciously or subconsciously, you've got interest in that thing. Pursue that interest. In your younger generation, now that you're young, before you have bills to pay, children to feed, this is the time to explore. People can build careers online. The way the world is, whether we're a camp, I love social media, or I don't love whatever camp you are, social media, I think, is here to stay. The digital world is here to stay. It's about how you're going to make the best use of it. So if you're someone in media, I've read there's a lady on Instagram that I have huge respect for. She made a first class. She's from an Asian background. And the reason I'll tell you the reason why I mentioned her background. She did law and she had a first class in law. And she went through that struggle as well. Because of the kind of background she came from, it was not acceptable for her to just say, I want to leave law and pursue being an Instagram influencer. And so she was saying on her blog how she had to convince her parents that, yes, I know it's prestigious to be a lawyer, but I don't like it. This is what I love to do. And today she has created a huge career for herself as an Instagram influencer, sponsored by so many brands, some of the biggest brands in the world. So the young person listening, your career is not one way. It doesn't have to follow one pattern. But above all of this, maybe one thing I want you to really take away from this is identify your core value. Because and when I say core value, what do I mean? Your core value is that principle, that belief system that drives a lot of things you do. One of my core values is pursuit of impact. So everything I do, whether it's my day job, whether it's one business, the question I always ask myself, Lola, are you making an impact? Lola, can you create impact in this space? So the young person, identify what that is for you. I don't know what it is for you, but whatever that is for you, and then try and build a career that supports that core value. So that drives a lot of your career decisions.
I love that. I love that advice that you've given as well. And I was just quickly making notes as well because I think it's so valuable what you've just said, Lola. And it just brings back a conversation. This is just really random, but I had a conversation yesterday with my nephew, who's about 19 now, and he just got his results. And he was just very uncertain about where he wants to go with his future. He was just asking me for advice. And what you just said now is something similar that I had a conversation with him, but it really, like, did, like, things like, don't let your degree determine who you become and who you are. Don't be stuck in that tunnel vision, like, where you're heading to. And also being experimental, like, a lot of things that, even for myself when I was starting out, I learned a lot is like really try and push yourself out of your comfort zone and really challenge yourself. And I think a lot of young people miss out on the opportunity to really just experimenting, see what they like, what they don't like before they decide on what path that they want to go on into. And what you said is about, identifying your core value. And sadly, one thing I've come across is that we don't really ever explore that properly, even in education or in other training courses. Like, what talents do you have? What values that you wanna, you have that you want to bring on table? What kind of impact you want to bring to, have in terms of society and in terms of the legacy that you want to leave behind as well. Beautifully said, Lola. Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Now you've briefly mentioned this previously, but can you remind us what your biggest obstacles and challenges that you've faced in your career?
um, for me, it's choice.
Mm.
Two things, finance and choice. Choice in the sense that when I started out about 6 years ago, I soon realized I was a multi-passionate, multi-potentialite. And what that means is someone like me are people that we can excel in multiple areas. Some are connected, some are totally unconnected. And because the world we live in, it's a world that quote unquote values and recognize speciality. If you're specialized in a field, that's what the world wants. They want you to be a doctor and just be one doctor. They want you to be a lawyer and not be anything else. They want you to be a footballer and do nothing else. That's the world sort of gravitates towards people that are specialized. And so for me, I realized I love personal development. I love entrepreneurship. I love romantic relationship and marriage, love. They're all this different parts of me that I love. So the one of the biggest obstacle was choice. Do I choose or do I honor all of me? And all the books I kept reading, when they say jack of all trade, master of none, you can't be all of these things, you have to be one thing. And I'm like, but I can't be one thing. When I tried to be one thing, so Impacts where we do a lot of career advice, personal development stuff, is not connected to love, relationship, romance. It's not. So I'm like trying to choose. So sometimes I'm working on career, personal development, and then and I need to talk about love and relationship as well. And then I started opening different websites. I was just really confused. And then after about 2 years, I said to myself, you know what? I am tired of trying to please society. I am tired of all this multiple expectation. This is who I am. This is who I've been created. I didn't choose to be this person. This is just the way God created me. And so, because of that, I decided I was going to honor all of me and show up fully as myself. So, the biggest obstacle I had was that choice because I had been conditioned to assume I had to choose one thing. And then, when I eventually overcame that obstacle, the second obstacle was money because because I decided law wasn't for me anymore. I wanted to pursue these things that I was passionate about, and I recognized my talent. I then had to learn how to turn all of this interest and passion into a viable financial something that can give me financial empowerment, because one of my own core values is freedom, and freedom comes when I say freedom, I mean freedom of location, freedom of money, freedom in all of its ramifications. So I needed to know that I had that freedom to make money, and that is still a journey, and I'm still learning that. But I think for me those were those two things. But recently, I'm going to share this story. I organized the love and relationship marriage projects that I've been trying to do or hoping to do. Eventually, I did it. And I launched 3 weeks ago the first 100 tickets, though they were free tickets, but the first 100 tickets sold out in less than 3 hours. We then got so many requests saying we want more ticket, we want more ticket. As I'm speaking, eventually for like 3 days, I created extra tickets. 600 tickets were snapped up. What does that tell you? And the person listening is the fear that we have, the obstacle we have. Remember, this was an obstacle for me because I kept thinking, I do impact streets. Why should I be talking about love and marriage? But because I overcame that obstacle of choice, I overcame that obstacle of what we people say, the fear of why is she talking about love and marriage now? And I just decided to honor all of me, which includes my passion for helping people with romantic relationship. And the evidence of that, the evidence of saying when you try and do things outside of your comfort zone, when you overcome obstacles, when you dance with fear. I don't think we can ever overcome our fear, but I think we can fly with fear. We can dance with fear as long as you don't let your fear be in the driver's seat. Because even though I was afraid, well, people say da, I still did it. And now the evidence of this is I have 600 people registered and I still have about 100 people on the wait list. So if you're the young person listening today, whatever obstacle that might look like for you, don't let that obstacle stop you. Don't let it prevent you from doing what feels true to your soul.
Well, I completely agree with the core value that you put out there. Freedom being that core value, and without having that freedom, you don't really have the choice to pursue your passions, do you, to the full extent? And so I think definitely freedom is something that everyone should have instilled in them from a young age, so that when it comes to building your career, you can not avoid those obstacles, but get over those obstacles, like we do at a hurdle on like sports day or something like that. Because everyone faces obstacles in life, but it's how you're going to jump those obstacles that make you, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on to the next question. Uh, this will be centered more around family life because obviously during not only COVID-19 but in general, your family and your social life can affect your business and vice versa. So I just wanted to know, how does your family and your social life affect your business and vice versa?
It does, like you said. So I'm mother to 8-year-old. My daughter is 8, my son is 6. And I was just saying to Farah before we started the interview how working from home has been really helpful. It does affect, but again, it's for so the as a mom who has all this multiple projects I'm working on, the mom guilt will always be there. You're constantly, I for one, I think I'm constantly questioning and asking myself, am I giving them the attention they need? Am I doing the right thing? I'm constantly judging myself. So it does affect it. But like you said, it's a hurdle we have to cross. This year for me, I'm doing so much. And one of the things I've had to accept is maybe this year will not be my best year as a mom, and that is fine. And that is fine. It may sound very selfish to some people. I apologize in ahead, but I know that there have been last year, for example, was my goal for my motherhood goal was creating memories with my children, and we were able to travel, create memories, and I felt last year I was in my zone of genius in my motherhood as a mother. And this year, I know that because of all this projects I'm working on, whilst I still will be a loving and great mom, I might not be the kind of mother I was last year. But as long as you're having that communication with them and you're letting them know, and the little time is about mindful parenting. So every night I do my best that we read a book, and even if it's that 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day that is just for them, then I know that my phone, my whatever is not around, that I'm being present, I'm mindful. So what I would say to that is it does affect, but it's about how you deal with it. And sometimes you just have to accept that, you know, there's certain things that will have to take priority over certain things, and that's a choice you have to make as a parent.
Very incredible. That's amazing to hear that as well, Lola. And one of the things that actually caught my eye, I want to, ask you a follow-up question to it is, you said, a lot of, especially when you're talking about obstacles and challenges that you faced along the way, one of the things that you mentioned is like flying with fear. I want to, pick your brain a little bit more, especially like, say, for example, you've got a young person that's looking to start maybe a business or to, try a new thing, and they, at the moment, because of the COVID-19, they're locked in, they can't do much, but they want to experiment and maybe explore virtually. What tips would you give them, especially, if you said, fear is like it's always going to be there, but being able to adjust to it and be able to fly with it. Can you expand on that a little bit more, what you mean by that?
I'll tell you a short story about that fear and to the
Hmm.
young person that might be having fear. So January 27 this year, I opened a page on Instagram and I called it the Single Series, sharing premarital tips with yet to be married Muslims. And after I shared it, my goal was to help people to share the things that I wish I knew when I was in my 20s about marriage, choosing spouse, now that I'm in my 30s. But I was so afraid. I was so afraid because I felt people would judge my own marriage. They would think it's because I have a bad marriage. They would think this, they would think that. I was so terrified because, even though we love to talk about marriage and love in the world generally as human beings, nobody really wants to come out there and talk about their own marriage. It was difficult to do something like that without actually talking about my own marriage. And, it was just all these fears. So I opened that page in January, and then I allowed fear. That's when you allow fear to be in the driver's seat. And I didn't do anything about it. And then events led to events. And later this year, like I was saying earlier, I eventually did it. And it's been an extremely successful project that has now led to so many things. Now, to the young person listening now, when I say fly with fear, for as long as you're going outside of your comfort zone, doing something that you probably have never done before, you would experience fear. You would experience that resistance within you. But what do you do with that resistance? I think what you do is You acknowledge that fear, you accept that fear, but you decide to take action in spite of that fear. I think the only thing that kills fear is action, testing things, doing things. COVID-19 has happened. What can you do in this period? I'll tell you for free, my business has been very successful during COVID. Why? Because a lot of the things I do, like training, workshops, everybody's gone to Zoom. I literally cannot accommodate requests for workshop and all of that because so many we're social beings. We want to connect, and right now the only way we're connecting is through different online platforms. And so for someone like me, my business has really grown. We've really achieved a lot because of the nature of our business. So I don't know what the nature of your business is, but think about how can you make the most of this period. Anything online during COVID now will sell. Diversity and inclusion will people would buy into that, obviously because of the sad experiences we've had in the US. But don't let your fear or the thinking of it might fail. Failure is what you call it. I see failure as my first attempt in learning. If I don't learn from that experience, then it's a failure, but you will learn from it. So all that negative mind, all the voices saying to you, you might fail, it might fail, it might not work, people may not, it doesn't matter. Have that mindset that whether it works or it doesn't work, this is a learning experience. And whilst I'll say it again, your fear will be there, acknowledge it, accept it, but don't let it stop you. Rather, use it to take action.
Powerful, very powerful advice there, Lola. Really summarized it really well. Failure is an attempt in learning. Actually, do you remember? I'll add into that as well. That recently we had to basically we had an intern with us early in the year. Unfortunately, we had to let them go because they were not meeting their requirements and not fully understanding like the role itself as well. And we came to a mutual agreement that the role wasn't working out for them. And then at the time, the young person was like, "Oh, I failed at my internship. I didn't do well." It just really felt down on herself. Months later, the young person emailed me and said, come to think of it, that's actually a really good learning experience because that failure able to make me realize like some of the stuff that you touched on as well, like the core value, like the type of work environment I want to be in, what type of job I want to pursue. As I was actually able to take learning from that. So I would even add to that as well. What you said as well is like using it as a learning curve and using it as a way to push you forward and act and putting actions forward as well because and I'm sure you could back up to this as well is like you don't see the success or the key message or the lessons that you learn until you're like down time has passed and you can reflect backwards because you can't see forward at the time. And I'd be really interested to explore that as well because you also mentioned that that you part of your core values is to have that freedom, not to have to be and also to have choices so you can you've got two businesses, the Impact Street, as well as it'd be really good to hear what you meant by romantic relationships and also because from what I remember and from what I know from you, Lola, you do amazing work that includes mentoring, training, workshops, purposeful entrepreneurship, meaningful career. You mentioned you love personal development, which is something me and you share in common. I'm really interested to know if you could expand a little bit more what you mean by the relationship business aspect of it as well, and what that looks like, and how that is what kind of impact it's having on the community itself as well.
Thanks, Farah. So the relationship. So I've been married how many years now? 8 years. And it's like, many things in life. It's been good, bad, challenges. It's been 8 years of learning. And so I decided that I was going to help the community. I come from a Nigerian background, and I know that in my community, as Nigerian Muslims in particular, when it comes to matters of marriage, our parents tend to give the same old advice. But what then happens is when you get into the marriage, a lot of people realize that they wish they knew a lot of things before they got married. When you were talking about the intern and when you mentioned about sometimes you have to look back to look forward, sometimes you have to get the real lessons of something, you have to look back. That is exactly why I started. It's called the single series. The single series is me now, 9 years into marriage, looking back and talking to the Lola of 10 years ago before she decided that she was going to get married and who she was going to marry. What did the Lola of 10 years ago wish she knew that would help somebody in my situation? That 10 years ago, Lola, that will help that person. And so I created, this project. It's the success is mind blowing. The impact is having is like, for example, 600 tickets sold out in like 24 hours to tell you that there's a huge need for these conversations in my community. I think as a human being, we will, through the journey of life, there are three decisions we'll make that I consider the most important three decisions anybody will make. The first decision is the decision to get to know who you are outside of societal expectation, even outside of organized religion, who you are at the core. The second decision, I think, is the relationship you choose to have with your creator. When I say creator, I don't mean necessarily God. It's more about like your purpose, your purpose for being. Why were you created? I think every human should be able to explore the answer to that. Why are you here? For those of us of the Muslim faith, it's sort of easy because it's in the divine manual why we're created. But for people outside of the Muslim faith, I think it's very necessary as a human being to really enjoy this human experience, to understand why you're here. That's the second decision. And no doubt, the third decision is the choice of spouse. Is that decision of this is the person I want to commit, I want to love, and I want to share my life and my heart with, hopefully forever. People say a lot of time life is short, life is too short to do this. But I also say actually life is sometimes too long to be in a relationship where you're unhappy. If you marry when you're in your 20s and God willing, you end up 80, like my grandma, she's 87 now, and you're 87. That's about 67 years of your life. That is a long time to spend it with somebody you don't have things in common with, or you don't love, or to settle. So I went into relationship and romance and all of that because I recognize the importance of that spouse choice. And I also think that a lot of issues people have in marriage is because of the foundation. I don't think those issues occur in marriage is because a lot of times people have not done what they should do before they get married. People are marrying people that is not right for them. That's why I'm so passionate about helping you. So it's all premarital, it's focused on people that are yet to be married. And that's why I decided to do that. Because look, if we're going to make the world a better place, if we're really going to make an impact in this world, it's the smallest institution in the world is the family unit. It is a family unit. The next president will be born in a home. The next Barack Obama will be born in a home. How about we help that home to function properly from inception so that the children that come out from that home, they're nurtured, they're loved, they thrive. But when you have a home where mommy and daddy are like roommates, where mommy and daddy don't talk to each other, what kind of children will those children grow up to be? And so to answer your question, to bring everything back is yes, I had to go into that because there's a lot of work we need to do. The family unit is strong, and I focus on Muslims from Nigeria background because marriages, the truth is marriages in my community is just not great.
Incredible. A powerful way you said as well, like the family unit is a the first institution that is that's the core foundation of when you're starting out, and this is where you emulate as a young person. You pick up the traits from your parents and from your sibling and from your community as well. So in a way, this kind of influences the type of person that you become. It's really interesting. I'd be really interested to hear as well because you do quite a lot of very interesting work from Impact Street to the single series to your, the legacy that you want to leave behind. How do you how do you manage your time well, and how do you find a balance between your personal, professional, and spiritual life as well? We're really interested to hear that. Like, what kind of strategic approach have you taken, and what advice would you give to a young person that wants to do many things, but they're not sure how to really like structure themselves and manage their time?
Time management in the world of personal development, you can separate personal development from time management. I continue to learn how to manage time. But one of the things that has helped me is I use Google Calendar, something as simple as Google Calendar, and whatever I need to do, I just put it on my calendar so that I'm constantly being reminded. I tell Alexa to remind me things. But one thing I continue to struggle with is the people like us that do work that we're so passionate about, that we love, is the time to relax, the time to disconnect, the time to just be and have fun. So I'm constantly struggling with that. Like on Saturday, I had a very successful episode of one of the single series, and I was saying to myself, immediately after I finished, the next thing is I was already planning the next episode. I was reading the books, the questions, and I literally had to say to myself that, look, you need to learn to disconnect. And so what I did was I turned my phone off. So another thing I do a lot that is so powerful for me personally is I turn my phone off. I put my phone away for like hours, because those of us in the online space, we know how phone can be such a huge distraction. Whether you love social media or you hate social media, the phone we use social media, a lot of us, and so constant, just sometimes just seeing that phone, even when you're not touching it, I find it personally distracting. So three things that I want to share is this is something I'm learning, to be honest. So forgive me ahead if I don't give you tips that will be game changing, but I use Alexa, and Alexa is constantly reminding me of things that I need to do. I use Google Calendar, and I put my phone away. I turn my phone off when I'm going out, because sometimes for the creative process, when I go for a walk, so all the apps, when you're exercising, I don't have any app on my phone, because that means when I'm going for a walk, when I'm supposed to just be thinking or just not think, I have my phone. So what I do is I don't take my phone anywhere. I go out without the phone. And yeah, those are the things I do, and I hope to continue to get better, but right now is a struggle.
Perfect. And I completely agree with you as well on that aspect as well. Similar to what we've experienced, me and Samir as well, is really managing your time and using these tools to really efficiently work together and also meet your objectives. And to follow up a question for you as well is, I'd be interested to know um, how how do you, like, for example, like say a young person starting out, whether they want to start a business, they want to start a project, or maybe just develop really strong connections. How do you maintain really, like, through the through the community, the partners, the people that you work with? How do you maintain healthy and productive relationships with those partners and connections? And what advice would you give to a young person that wants to, they're starting out, but they're building their network base? How do they maintain that relationship, and what approach have you taken?
So one of the things I say to business owners is, if you're doing a service-based business, which a lot of the online space is service-based, is different from a product-based business. So a product-based is that you have something physical that you're selling, and that may not necessarily need a lot of network building interaction. You could just have your products you're selling on Amazon, and people don't necessarily have to know you to buy your product. So I'll look at those in the service-based business. So if you're in the service-based business, someone like me, and perhaps what you do as well, Farah, you you need a network. You absolutely need a network. I actually go further to say that your audience, whether you call it network, audience relationships, is like the startup capital for your business. If you're doing a product based business, you need money from the wherever you get the money from to produce the things you want to sell. But if you're doing something that has to do with service, maybe you're sharing your knowledge, you're doing workshop, your capital, you still need the capital. It's just that the capital is not money, is the audience, is the relationship, is the network. Now, how do you build that, or how do you keep it, how do you make it work for you? I use one platform. There are different platforms you can use, and I'll suggest to any young person, I don't think you need to be on all the platforms. If you do that, it's gonna suck all your time. For example, I don't use Facebook, I use Instagram, and I stick with Instagram. And what then happens is you will get people that a lot of people may love what you do, and some will not love it. No, you can't please everybody. I'll suggest don't ever take things personal. Don't engage in online banter. Don't I One of the things that I do is I keep it strictly professional, especially as a Muslim woman. When it comes to male interaction, I'm quite very, I put that boundary. So one thing I'll say to you is you need to have boundaries. You need to be very strategic. You need to also be very professional. For example, if I wanted to reach out to somebody to come as a guest on my platform, rather than just go in and send them a DM, I'll first look for them on LinkedIn because I consider LinkedIn a far more professional platform. And even before I go to LinkedIn, I'll see if I can find an email for them and email them first. Because what that tells that person is you're a professional rather than just go into their DM, which I think a lot of people will do. There is nothing wrong with doing that, but I'll suggest one of the things that has worked for me and has sort of earned me, I feel, respect is I approach people on a very professional basis. And to add to that is whether the way the world is in this digital space, you should have an online print, or what I call it, an online bio, that when people Google yourself. I don't know, I Google myself all the time. Google yourself, and as much as possible, try and make sure that what people will find about you is something they want to associate with. Because at the end of the day, professionals, your network, your audience, they want to associate with you if you're doing good things in the world. If you're not, is a lot more difficult. So I don't know, Farah, if I've answered that question, but what has worked for me is keeping things very professional, approaching people in a very professional way, and putting up boundaries where necessary.
Amazing. Yeah, you definitely answer those questions, and I think it gives us quite a lot of insight as well, the approaches that young people can take, and also just anyone that's looking to really just even, like, you mentioned earlier, your degree doesn't determine where you're heading. You had a complete career change, and you pursued what you're very passionate about and what you're committed to, and you made it possible that even when you mentioned as well some of the challenges that you faced when it came to choices, not sticking to one, but multiplying your trade and your skills, and also knowing that this is in line with your core values. So I think, yeah, definitely you've touched on quite a really in-depth tips and advice and guidance. And I guess one last question before as we come up to the end of our podcast is, did you know that this is going to lead to a fulfilling path for you, or was it a gamble at the beginning, or did you get were you able to get a mentor? What was the first thing that you did initially when you started out?
That's a great question. So it wasn't a gamble. Did
Hmm.
I know it was going to lead to, fulfillment?
Hmm.
I knew it was going to lead to fulfillment, but I didn't know whether it was going to lead to financial fulfillment, because like I said, my core value is freedom, so money is important. I didn't know how or whether it would lead to financial fulfillment.
Hmm.
But how did I actually start out? I started out by trying to identify the things that come naturally to me. As a young person, sometimes you don't even know what you're passionate about. There's so many things you don't know which one it is. So for me, as well, maybe 7 years back, I didn't know what exactly it is. I didn't know. I didn't have a name for it, because sometimes you have a name for something, you can just Google. Maybe you like personal development. Because you have a name for personal development, you can Google, how do I become a personal development coach, for example. But when you don't even have a name for something, it's hard. Two things I did that really helped. I started reading. I love reading. So the young person, I'll suggest read books. I started reading books on personal development, on discovering your interest, your talent, and all of that. And then I'm lucky to have an amazing father who nurtured my curiosity from the day I could open my mouth and speak. So I always go back to my dad. So I said to my dad, I said, Dad, I've decided law is not for me, but I don't know what it is that I want to do. Can you remind me, who was I when I was a child? Like, what were those things that I liked? Is there anything that comes to mind? Is there anything that jumps at you? And my dad said to me that you always used to say, Lola, I want to help people. That back then in Nigeria, the critical any grown up that sees you, they're asking, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And dad said, I always used to say, I want to help people. I want to help people. And so I sort of started, and then I asked my siblings, two of my siblings, everybody said, you always say you wanted to help people. One of them said, I think you should be a motivational speaker. Another person, so all of these things started coming out. And then I started paying attention and writing it. And then I engaged. I wasn't just thinking, I engaged. When I say engage, I took action. That's what I mean. Because I like to help people. And I'm like, okay, who do I want to help? I'm passionate about Nigerians. Okay, I want to help Nigerians. And I opened an Instagram page. Initially, I started with even modest fashion. So I've done modest fashion before. So I started with that, and I just realized I was sharing things. I started by sharing, I was reading a lot of books, and I was sharing the things that I was reading, and it was adding value. So go back to, if you have parents or siblings, that's for those that are struggling to find out what it is that they like. But if you've moved past that stage and you know what it is you like, maybe you've identified three, four things. The next thing is you have to do, you need to take action. So I started engaging with the process by just, it was something as simple as reaching out. I mean, I reached out to you. You said, do you want to do a workshop? You asked me if I wanted to do a workshop. I opened a website. All of these things, a lot of young people, you feel you're not qualified to do it. It's an online space. You don't need a qualification, except maybe the nature of the business requires a qualification. Or most of these things, you don't need a qualification or you need to go back to school. I literally just opened a website and I was sharing on social media and I was writing about the things I was passionate about. And from writing about it, from sharing, people started realizing, oh, she could help us with this. And I started getting requests to come and do paid workshops. So start with that process of number one, pay attention to the things that come naturally to you. Number two, ask people that know you, perhaps people that know you from when you were a child. Number three, when you identify these things, take action. The action could be something as simple as sharing what you care about on your WhatsApp status. Even if you don't use social media, share with your friends over time. And then the fourth thing, what then happens is when people recognize what you're passionate about, what you're sharing, they will start to come to you. Oh, Samira, can you do this for us? Can you do that for us? And all I find in my experience that then the last part is then money, when you can then monetize and profit from the knowledge that you're sharing.
Incredible, incredible. Beautifully summarized. And I want to touch on something that you mentioned actually that I've come across quite a lot with young people, especially when they're starting out, whether it be their career or still figuring out what they want to do. And this not only just young people, just in general, people in society, is the first step being, being comfortable to ask for help. Like I've seen that so many times. Even myself, when we started UPress, I remember early on, I felt very uncomfortable to ask for help or guidance at the beginning. And what advice would you give someone that's like facing that obstacle? They want to start, but they're either shy or they don't know what approach to take. Because sometimes asking for help, is showing vulnerability, and also in some cases it's also going against your pride as well, knowing that saying, I'm not good at this, therefore I need advice or guidance. What advice would you give to someone that's struggling with that aspect?
That's a really good question, and one that I think comes with. So the advice I'll give to you is,
Hmm.
what is the price of not asking? What is the price of not asking?
That's good.
And if you ask, what's the worst that can happen? Literally, what is the worst that could happen? And I'll tell you a short story. When I wanted to invite a guest for the single series, there was a brother in the Muslim community that everybody kept saying I should ask him to come and speak on the topic we're speaking on. When I Googled this brother, I realized he had done documentaries for BBC. He's been on, I think, CNN. He's been talked all over the world. And I'm like, how can I ask a celebrity? Like, why would he even say yes? And I struggled for like 2 weeks. I'm like, I can't ask him. He's too this, he's too that. Who am I? Farah, you know what I did? Eventually, I drafted a message and I said, what is the worst that can happen? Like literally, I kept saying to myself, Lola, what's the worst that can happen? He will never respond. And that is okay. And then you have to you need to accept whatever the person says is okay. I think the worst is they will ignore you because, some people can be kind and just tell you, sorry, I can't make it. But for me, I find it more insulting when someone ignores me, And I'm like, if he ignores me, is that okay? And I said, actually, yes. If he ignores me, it's okay because maybe 2 years later, when I'm also a celebrity, he would then remember that, oh, let's collaborate. But for whatever it is, at least they know who I am now. And surprisingly, I reached out. Eventually, he spoke at the event. He eventually spoke. He saw it on fantastic. I love what you're doing. Da, da, da. I'd love to be part of it. So sometimes if you don't ask, you don't know. The fact that he was part of it has really taken the single series to another level. So to the young person is number one, what's the price of not asking? Number two is if you ask, what's the worst that will happen? They will ignore you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you ask 10 people or 20 people, at least out of 20 people, one person will say yes. Number three is don't think it's just one human being that can help you. Trust me, there are a lot of people out there that can help you. And most people are actually willing to help. Google them, stalk. When I say stalk them, I mean just go on their LinkedIn. And one of the ways you can do is wherever they're active on any platform, engage with their post. Maybe you're trying to engage in an authentic way, not engaging in a way that you're trying to be cheeky. Just be authentic. If they share something that you like that resonates with you, leave a comment. What that means is they start to notice you. And again, I'll say, let yourself accept whatever response. If they ignore you, that is fine. I don't hold it against them because another thing I do is when I want to reach out to someone for help, I will imagine that maybe 1,000 other people are reaching out to them. So I already give them that benefit of doubt that, you know what, if they don't come back to me, that is fine. I make excuses and and I never hold it against them. And the best part is, what if you reach out and they say yes? What if they say yes? And it's possible they can say yes. Like the brother said yes to us for the single series. So again, don't let that fear of what if they say no, hold you back. Just ask and accept whatever response you get.
Incredible, incredible. And I think, that summarizes it really well with going back to what you said, flying with fear, like, assessing, what's the best and worst that can come out of it. And the reward is going to be a lot more worth it. And if you weigh out, the pros and cons as well, it gives you a bit more scope. And also through that, what you mentioned as well, linking it back to what you said, through failure, through challenges and what you face is what really shapes who you are and it pushes you forward. So beautifully said as well, Lola. And Lola, yes, for our listeners, how can they find out more information about Impact Street and the single series? How can they get involved and get in touch with you?
Thank you, Farah. So I active on Instagram and it's lola.yunus. So you can find me on Instagram at lola.yunus. And Impact Street will be doing workshops from September, the single series as well, which I think is so popular with young people. So you can find us on Instagram as well as the single series. And yeah, I hope to connect to a lot of your audience as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lola, for joining us today. It's been really insightful, not only for our, our listeners, but also for me and Samir. We learned so much from you as well. And as always, we enjoy working with you. So we're looking forward to do more work together, more collaborative projects. And yeah, you've laid down so many insightful advice and tips and guidance. And most importantly, the key message I take away from today's podcast is don't be afraid and really push yourself and pursue we're all blessed with a gift and a talent, and go out there and find out what how you can leave your print in society and in the world as well, and what kind of legacy you want to have as well. But yeah, so thank you again, Lola, for joining us today. Samir, so what we got coming up for the next episode, and how can people keep in touch with what we've got going on?
Yeah, so this episode will be available yet again on scribershive.com as well as SoundCloud and YouTube. And you can stay in tune for the next episode. We'll be talking to another special guest, another entrepreneur that will be looking at social activism. So thank you for joining us today. And I'd like to personally thank Lola for giving us such great advice as well as insight on how her career and her life has been as well. So thank you very much, Lola, for being here.
Thank you so much, Farah and Samir, for having me. I've loved this. Thank you.
Amazing. All right. So this episode is available on scribeshive.com and stay tuned for the next. Thank you for listening.